Good evening. What do journalists do is the question we ask tonight. They ask questions and they report facts. Even if, and especially if, these facts and reports unsettle people in power. Journalists are not public relations agents. It's not their job to make their government look good. It's not their job to justify the misdeeds of the establishment. When they do, they ruffle feathers. That's what happens in most countries. When they do that in Pakistan, they're threatened and assaulted, some even killed. The recourse to law is at best a farce in a country like Pakistan. And on Gravitas tonight, we are telling you what WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Taha Siddiqui went through today, what he faced, how he was beaten up, threatened, almost shot on a day when he was filing a report, incidentally, on forced disappearances in Pakistan. What's worse, many there from the journalistic community are justifying this persecution of one of their own. International media has joined cause with WION. The world has spoken up. But is Pakistan listening? I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. Also on the show tonight, the children of war in Syria. Heart-wrenching images of kids caught in the crossfire in a country that has been witnessing war for years now. India's economy has huge growth potential, says the World Bank, projecting GDP growth of 7.3% this year. And your daily dose of international news on Gravitas Global Headlines coming up later on the show. But first, the top story on the show. It's not always that a journalist becomes the story. It's mostly for the wrong reasons. Today, the story and the journalist is WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Taha Siddiqui, who escaped by the skin of his teeth. He was attacked by 10 to 12 armed men while on his way to the airport in Islamabad. We'll bring you the sequence of events later. Let's first take a look at what Taha said about the assault. A little more than an hour back, he interacted with fellow members of Pakistani media and narrated his ordeal. A few media persons did try to unsettle him at that press conference, questioning his motive, even picking holes in his account. But Taha Siddiqui has said that there is enough evidence to prove his case. This includes an eyewitness. Listen to what he said.
जैसे कि सब जानते हैं कि भारत सदा मीडिया, प्रेस और पत्रकारों की स्वतंत्रता के पक्ष में रहा है और यदि
Right, we'll just play out for you what Taha said in that press conference just a few minutes back. He defended, of course, his position. He told the world why he reported the way he did and why he'll continue to do it despite the threats that he's been receiving. And let us tell you that this is not the first time that Taha has had to face this, the wrath and the ire of the establishment in Pakistan. It has happened in the past. Last year, he was engaged in a court battle that still continues with the Federal Investigation Agency. And today he came out and gave his side of the story. We'll play out a soundbite of that press conference in just a bit. We've also received political reactions, first from Pakistan, where Pakistan People's Party Chief Bilawal Bhutto Zardari issued a statement on Twitter, and this is what he said. I'm quoting, "The attempted abduction of Taha Siddiqui in Islamabad once again underlines the dangers faced by Pakistan's journalistic community. For such brazen attacks to repeatedly take place in our capital is unacceptable." We'll be asking Pakistan People's Party parliamentarians to take this issue up in Parliament. So this is going to be raised in the Parliament of Pakistan. It remains to be seen what the government does about it. India's Union Minister Jitendra Singh also issued a statement condemning this act on behalf of the government of India. Listen to what he said.
जैसे कि सब जानते हैं कि भारत सदा मीडिया, प्रेस और पत्रकारों की स्वतंत्रता के पक्ष में रहा है और यदि इस प्रकार की घटना हुई है पाकिस्तान में तो निंदनीय भी है और भारतीय हित का भी ये तकाजा है कि इसकी निंदा की जाए और इसका उचित संज्ञान लिया जाए.
Taha Siddiqui, of course, still remains on the radar of those agencies. We do not know, we're not saying here who targeted him. All that we are saying is that more than 12 hours since the attack, more than 12 hours since the assault, even an FIR has not been filed. And that is something that the Pakistani government and security agencies must answer for. Listen into what Taha said in his defense.
I tried to get their attention. They looked at me, they looked at those people, and then they just walked away because they were gestured to move. I basically then realized that my only way is that I cooperate with them. So I started cooperating. I told them I'll cooperate with you. So they put me back in my car. One of the guys came and sat inside with me. And the other driver pushed out the driver of that taxi and sat in front of the driving seat. At that time, I had a moment of sort of presence of mind, and I thought that this might be my turn to escape, because on my right there was nobody, and there was a door of the back seat door, and there was nobody standing. They were standing a little bit behind, and they were all sitting down in the car at that time to take me away. So I opened the door. It luckily opened. It was unlocked. I managed to get out on the green belt. I could hear from them behind saying that, shoot him, shoot him, catch him, shoot him. But by that time I was on the other side of the road. It was heavy traffic. I luckily managed to stop a taxi. I got into the taxi. The taxi took me a few kilometers away. थोड़ा आगे लेके गई है. उसके बाद फिर he also realized कि कोई trouble है, कोई problem है. तो उसने मुझे बोला, भाई आप मुझे भी problem में डाल रहे हैं, आप निकले यहाँ से. और आपके पीछे आप कोई फौजी वाली लोग रहे थे या कुछ कहते थे, क्या हुआ आपके साथ? मैंने कहा कि मुझे नहीं पता कौन थे वो. उसके बाद basically then I got off and I went there on the Islamabad highway. There are these empty plots on the sides. तो मैं उस plot में गया और मैं वहाँ पे फिर अपनी वहाँ ditches हैं, वहाँ पे जाके झाड़ियों में the bushes I hid. उस वक्त में then I was wearing this red sweater. I took that off because I was like ये पीछे से अगर मार कर लेंगे मुझे नजर आएगा. So I took it off. और ये तो बाद में मैंने रिकवर किया पुलिस के साथ जाके उसी जगह. उसके बाद फिर then I basically got off to the service side, service road पे गया. वहाँ पे I asked टैक्सी ड्राइवर एक था, उससे मैंने बोला कि मुझे इस्लामाबाद ले जाओ. उसी दौरान फिर मुझे एक ही नंबर याद था, हमारे एक दोस्त थे जर्नलिस्ट, उनको फ़ोन किया. उन्होंने फिर और जर्नलिस्ट को फ़ोन किया और फिर एक जर्नलिस्ट ने एडवाइस की कि मैं इस वक्त जो सबसे करीबी थाना है वहाँ पर रहता हूँ. तो मैं उस थाने में वहाँ पे पहुँच गया और वहाँ पे जाके उसके बाद से मैंने उन्होंने बताया कि जी यहाँ जो रिस्ट्रिक्शन ही लगती है. वो थाना खन्नापुर का था. फिर खन्नापुर के थाना वालों ने मुझे अपनी कस्टडी में, अपनी प्रोटेक्शन में पुराना थाने लेके गए, जहाँ मैं अभी अपनी FIR दर्ज करा के आ रहा हूँ. मैं इसके साथ साथ ये भी मेंशन करना चाहूँगा कि ये पहली दफ़ा इस तरीके से मुझे इट्स एन अटेम्प्ट ऑन माय लाइफ and perhaps to kidnap me and then perhaps I would have become a missing person. एक मौजज़ा है, मैं बच गया, मैं निकल गया. और किस तरीके से निकला मुझे अभी भी खुद भी मैं इस शॉक में हूँ कि I don't know how I escaped. मुझे आप सब कुछ लोगों को पता है जैसे कि May 2017 में I was called by the Federal Investigation Agency over an alleged sort of list जो कि ऑनलाइन चल रही थी, जिसमें सोशल मीडिया एक्टिविस्ट का नाम था और कहा था कि इनको मिलानी की आरजी पे पकड़ा जाए. अब वो लिस्ट जेन्युइन है नहीं है मुझे नहीं मालूम है, लेकिन उसके बाद फिर मुझे FIA की तरफ से कॉलें आई, मेरे घर के बाहर नामालूम अफराद आए, मुझे अरेस्ट करने की कोशिशें की गई. और आसमा जानवी साहिबा जो है मेरी जो वकील हैं, उन्होंने हमने पिटीशन इस्लामाबाद हाई कोर्ट में दायर की थी और कोर्ट ने ऑर्डर किया था कि मुझे हरासा नहीं किया जाए. तो ये पहली दफा नहीं हुआ है. इससे पहले हमेशा मुझे इंटिमिडेट करते रहे हैं, मुझे डराते रहे हैं. मुख्तलिफ लोगों के थ्रू मेरी फैमिली के फ्रेंड्स को बोलते रहे कि इनसे ना मिलें. This has been happening and ongoing for many years ever since I started working for international media. And today I think they were about to take me away, and perhaps I would have been not sitting here with you guys and with all of my colleagues here if I did not react in that way.
Taha has been known as a bitter and bold critic of the Pakistani establishment, especially the military. In recent weeks, he has highlighted enforced disappearances in the country. While there is condemnation from around the world, the Pakistani establishment has remained mum on the development. The Pakistani High Commission refused to answer repeated calls from WION. Only human rights and media organizations in Pakistan have condemned this incident. The Rawalpindi Islamabad Union of Journalists has expressed serious concern and demanded a thorough investigation into this attempted kidnapping. In a statement, the union said that they are worried about the safety of journalists. The Human Rights Watch and journalists have also voiced concern. The Amnesty International has said in a statement, and I'm quoting again, the beating and attempted abduction of Taha Siddiqui is the latest in a deeply worrying pattern of attacks on journalists in Pakistan. This is the third case in recent months when a journalist has been targeted by violent attackers while travelling by car. There has thus far been a failure by the authorities to identify the perpetrators, let alone bring them to justice. Pakistani journalists have a right to carry out their work freely and without fear. Journalism is not a crime, but attacking journalists is. These crimes must be immediately and effectively investigated. All journalists must be protected from violence and intimidation. There must be a clear and unequivocal commitment by the Pakistani authorities to end impunity for attacks on journalists. We also heard from the man who was with Taha later, Asad Hashim of Al Jazeera. He tweeted, and I'm quoting, "With Taha Siddiqui right now, it is a miracle that he escaped. He was beaten, threatened with death, and his belongings taken. This is unacceptable. Journalism is not a crime." He says it again. Lawyer Yasser Latif Hamdani tweeted, and I'm quoting again, "As a patriotic Pakistani who supports the state, I'm shocked at the treatment meted out to Taha Siddiqui. This is not what our state or its institutions should stand for. Freedom of the press is a constitutional, fundamental right. We must be a nation of laws, not tyranny." Taha had filed a petition in the Islamabad High Court last May over alleged harassment by the Federal Investigation Agency. The High Court had directed the FIA to stop harassing him. Clearly, it hasn't happened. Let's quickly play out for you the sequence of events. What happened today, starting at 8:20 a.m. when Taha Siddiqui's car was overtaken by a group of armed men. Take a look at this. We'll try and play out for you what happens. Let's go to the guest this evening that we have for you. Sushant Sareen, Strategic Affairs expert with the ORF, joining us from New Delhi. Daniel Bastar is Asia Pacific Head of Reporters Without Frontiers, with us from Paris. Razaul Hassan Laskar, Associate Editor at the Hindustan Times in New Delhi, someone who's reported extensively from Pakistan. And Mona Alam, Political and International Affairs Journalist, with us from Islamabad. Good evening to all of you. Daniele Pagani, my colleague, also joining us from New Delhi. Hello, Daniele. Let me begin with Razaul Hassan Laskar. Raza, does it surprise you the way a journalist doing his job, sometimes unsettling the powers that be in Pakistan, was treated today? Come to you. Taha spoke out today, and did you see what happened in the press conference? There were some who were questioning him, questioning his motive, asking why he was targeted and how he escaped, quote unquote, like James Bond. Mona Alam, this was a question for you.
Right. If that had happened, certain journalists or anyone who has questioned Taha for his ordeal that he has undergone this morning only, it's absolutely condemnable once again. I don't think a person going through this level of mental trauma should be questioned in that manner. But having said that, Palki, you know as well that this phenomenon is a very global one, where journalists have come under attack and repeatedly so. RSF, you know, I quoted that with you in the later afternoon today only. RSF, the French media watchdog, has reported itself that there were 65 journalists who were killed alone in the year 2017. And women journalists or female journalists, I don't know if Mr. Sushant Sareen takes me as one, but obviously I too should be threatened by this fact that women journalists came under attack far more than compared to the male journalists who'd been reporting on similar lines. Gauri Lankesh had been one, of course, I've quoted that to you. Tripura had seen 2 consecutive journalists killed in India in 2017. Obviously, Sudeep Datta and this Bhumik, Shantanu Bhumik also. So certainly this is a global phenomenon, and I think we must equivocally address this as one and perceive it as one. Rather than putting the blame game on Pakistan and India, I think we should also we should perform our universal duty when it comes to such attacks and condemn it irrespective of whatever nation it goes to. Of course, for Taha Siddiqui as well, it's as condemnable as could be. In this particular case, of course, there are certain things that I am sure must be thoroughly investigated. Our unions and our associations of journalism have demanded so right after this attack. You've quoted the largest opposition party, Pakistan People's Party, its chairman Bilawal Bhutto, who has objected to this and who has condemned it to the highest order. Of course, this is in the...
I'm not sure if you cannot hear me or if you don't want to hear me. If you don't want to hear me, the point I'm making is you've had a long speech and it's very, all right, it's very interesting that every journalist I've spoken to from Pakistan feels compelled to compare this to India. We are not doing that. We are not saying this is India or Pakistan. We are saying a journalist has been targeted. The freedom of press has been attacked in Pakistan, and that should be condemned. That's the only point we're making. How does one explain the fact that more than 12 hours after this happened, even an FIR, the very basic thing, when you say that this is going to be investigated, when you say that justice will be done, when you say that the government is serious about addressing this, what explains the fact that even a basic FIR, the very first step towards getting someone justice, has not been filed despite Taha's written complaint? I do not understand that. Let me take this to Sushant Sareen. Sushant, earlier today someone said that I will not be holding my breath when it comes to getting justice in a case like this. How do you see the Pakistan establishment responding? While the whole world has spoken, the government and the security agencies have been conspicuous by their silence in Pakistan.
Well, it doesn't surprise me at all. It's happened in previous cases as well. This is precisely, there would be a furor by the journalistic community. Some of them would, shed some tears also, many of them insincerely. But this is part of the, the ecosystem which has been created. Look at the modus operandi. In every single incident where journalists have been attacked, and in the last couple of weeks, there was this gentleman, Matiullah Jan, who was, attacked. There were a couple of others who have been attacked. Every time, it's amazing that in a city like Islamabad, where, you have the Islamabad Safe City project, that virtually every square inch is being monitored by CCTV cameras and all. But every time a journalist is attacked, an inconvenient journalist, if I may add, somehow the CCTV coverage is simply not there. The checkposts which are supposed to be at those places are not there. The police is reluctant to file FIRs. There is no investigation of these cases. Invariably, these are cars with either no number plate or a fake number plate. And this in a city which has faced the brunt of terrorism not too long back, and where there is a very, very heavy security presence. Now, to imagine that in a city like that, people or cars can be roaming around without number plates and all of that, it's stretching the limits of credibility. Now, to my mind, what is happening is that from around 2013, 2014, there has been a concerted attempt in Pakistan, and there's been this realization that Pakistan's image is mud in the world. So they need to improve their image. Now, the image has to be improved not by changing the policy and not by cleaning up their act, but by muzzling the media. So as a result, many of the journalists who before 2013 could go to some of these hotspots, report from there, and there was some degree of independent reporting taking place, including from places like FATA, from places like Balochistan, and in places like Karachi and others. There have been more and more no-go areas for independent journalists. Journalists can go on conducted tours, but they cannot report independently, and they certainly will be tempting fate and worse if they actually report on some wrongdoing by the state or some complicity of the state with some of the more despicable kind of characters who roam around in Pakistan. So this is part of that pattern. This is part of that design to try and change the narrative by planting fake news rather than cleaning up the act.
Absolutely.
Now, if this has happened to Taha, in his case, it's been a double jeopardy. Number one, he was reporting on things which the Pakistani establishment and the deep state did not want reported. And number two, and even worse, he was reporting for a channel which is based in India. Now, clearly, I think he had this beating coming to him. Thankfully, he has not been harmed beyond being beaten up, beyond being intimidated. They have tried to harass him in the past. They have now gone up a level higher. And probably the idea is that he should, wake up, smell the coffee, understand that he is getting into things which he should not do. Journalists can, plant stories which are given as handouts by the ministries, by the, Pakistan Army, by the ISPR, which incidentally is the new hot controller in Pakistan. They stack every single panel on television channels is stacked with their men. They will make sure that those panels are loaded in their favor. There is no alternative voice. There is no dissenting voice. And even the voices of dissent are very, very meek and, subdued.
The voices of dissent are crushed in Pakistan. According to reports, in 2016, 115 journalists were killed on their job, for doing their job in Pakistan. And it has one of the worst records. It comes among the top 5. Daniel Bastar, we're looking at the statement issued by Amnesty International, among others, which says this is the third such case in recent months, and the government has done very little to bring the perpetrators to justice. What does it say about the state of affairs in Pakistan?
Well, we obviously demand the police and the justice institutions in Pakistan to look into this case very seriously. Because one big issue regarding journalist safety is the impunity of crimes committed against journalists. To give you just an example, last year in January 2017, 5 citizen journalists have been abducted. 3 of them clearly declared that they were abducted by some elements of the military. And one of them is still missing now. Samar Abbas is still missing. He's disappeared 1 year ago, and we still have no news from him. Many people suspect the military to be responsible for this. But since the military in Pakistan is very influential over the police force, the justice system, and the politicians in general, well, there is a big concern about how independent this institution can be. And this is very worrying issue for us at Reporters Without Borders, that there is a real lack of prosecutions for crimes against journalists. We have to keep in mind that Pakistan press has a tradition of freedom, which is quite vivid. Dawn, for instance, is a very famous newspaper. So there are grounds on which press freedom can be built in Pakistan. We just need a political will to assure the safety of journalists, and that's also why we. Our organization and our partners in Pakistan are trying to implement safety hubs for journalists among the several provinces in Pakistan, so that journalists who feel some urgent danger can find relief and protection from civil powers.
Mona Alam, for a moment, forget about comparing Pakistan to India or to China or to the US. Tell me, as a journalist in Pakistan, do you feel free to report on the stories that you want to report on without upsetting certain individuals or agencies? Do you have the freedom? And if you were to be in Taha's place, would you say that you have the confidence in the law enforcement agencies that justice will be done, that those 10 or 12 people who came bearing guns and threatened him and assaulted him will be brought to book?
Firstly, in the initial half, you thought I'm comparing Pakistan to India and the journalistic norms on either places, but that's not how it goes. I've also mentioned Daphne Galizia, who led the Panama Papers investigation. I'm sure she's neither from India nor from Pakistan. So I only wanted to make it clear I've categorically used the word global phenomenon, which applies to journalists who have come under attack in recent years. Samar Abbas was mentioned by one of our fellow panelists here. He belongs to a certain sect of Islam, and that is why he has come under attack. It is entirely a different case, as condemnable as Taha Siddiqui or anyone else, as a matter of fact, but it is entirely like comparing apples and oranges. And if you talk about me personally, Palki, I'd like to make it very clear to you, I, being a responsible journalist, I would report the goods and the bad equally. If there is something good that's ongoing, I would be very vehement and I would be very bold in making its reports, and I would not subscribe to any non-state elements who purposely want to defame Pakistan by cooking up any sort of false news, and I would never subscribe to them no matter what.
Okay.
Secondly, probably Mr. Sushant has mentioned that Taha Siddiqui was bureau chief of WION in Islamabad, and that is why he came under attack. That I don't think the case at all, because just the same neighborhood, just in the same place that I'm living, some streets across, lives Hamza Amir, who is the official correspondent of India Today here. And he's absolutely vocal. He reports just as he wants to.
But he's not reported out of Balochistan. I don't
that
remember seeing the last report from him. He's not reported on forced disappearances in Pakistan. It doesn't matter. Yes, it does matter who you're associated with, but more importantly, it matters what you do. What do you do as a journalist, and who are the people you expose, and that puts you in peril. I have to take a break, Mona. All right.
By the highest civil court in Pakistan. It's a matter undertaken, it's a matter sub judice by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
An FIR has not been filed. An FIR has not been filed. Talk about getting him justice. An FIR has not been filed in Pakistan more than 12 hours.